something was going on. Something was going on in the Facebook land of drama. And Jesus was trying to get me to realize that the drama it's just toxic. But he said, come sit outside, come outside and come sit with me on the patio. And so I sat on the patio and I came outside and he goes, you know, you're a drama queen, right? And I was like, hey, yes, but let me explain. Well, hello! Welcome to episode 5 of Let's Be Frank with your host, Molly Sky Brown. That's me. I'm really excited about today's episode. I've been thinking about it for the past couple days when it dropped in that this would be the next episode. And I'm really excited because it's a really fun part of my stories are these celebrity ghost visits. They're really, 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 really interesting. And if I can get through most of them today, I have more. So today I'm going to talk about, who did I write? Bowie. When Bowie showed up. Bowie was the first one to show up. I'm trying to think, did he even show? I have to go through my old journals, but he either showed up right after Jesus or right before Archangel Michael and Jesus showed up. Both of them. Because Bowie showed up right after he died. Well, obviously. And that was in January. And I'm trying to remember what date it was. I'm in the middle of a live recording. So, well, you know what? I can just look on my phone. Let's see. That'll help me. Bowie. 2016. Okay. So it was after Jesus arrived. Okay. So today's episode is Bowie and Freddie Mercury and Prince. And when Bowie showed up, it was right after he died, obviously. And it was 2016. So it was after Jesus. It was after Archangel Michael. And it was after Jesus had shown up. And let me fill you in what was going on in my head at the time. So Jesus was getting me on board with, so this is after our first Christmas of me being on board with Jesus again or ever. And it was an interesting Christmas. There was a lot of programming fighting myself at that time and clearing and transmuting. It was really incredible. And I really wanted to celebrate him. Whereas I used to not really like Christmases because I thought they really used him. And I thought it was just really weird. I mean, trust me, of course I love Christmas. I love the whole giving of presents but the whole story, it literally didn't add up. As someone who literally really loves research and investigating, I was like, all right, all of this is very pagan. He clearly was not born in December. But then we never addressed it as that. And that's why I had such a hard time believing and swallowing any Catholicism, because I'm like, you are blatantly lying to me and you won't explain why. Like, why won't you just say, yeah, he wasn't born in December, but this is when we do it and why? You know, it was in Catholic school or just questioning the programming, you know, later on in life when I would hear that Jesus wasn't born in December. It was like never answered. It was like, how dare you have questions? Or shamed for having questions or just, you know, blindly follow. But it was like, why don't you just explain that it has to do with the winter solstice and it has to do with this and it has to do with that. And there's variables in place. So this was a lot of the questioning that I had. So when Bowie showed up, it was right after that Christmas. And I was starting to really wanting to honor the Jesus part of Christmas, the real part of Christmas, not the Santa Claus part of Christmas. Like, if we're really saying it's Jesus's birthday, let's make it about Jesus's birthday then. And what does that even mean? It means God came to earth as conscious as possible through a divine lineage that would help him and support him on a mission to kill himself for the sake of our own fucking stupid ass script. And also use it as a pagan ritual to be used for forgiveness of all sins. For now and the end of time. Like, that's a big deal. That's way bigger than freaking Santa Claus. let's make Santa Claus his own thing. Let's make Jesus his own thing was kind of how I felt growing up with the whole learning about Jesus as this devout Catholic, going to literal Catholic school, and then also celebrating Santa Claus and giving him all this credit for being this amazing guy who's rewarding us for our good behavior. And I was like, oh, I thought God and Jesus are rewarding us for our good behavior. Or I don't know, the messaging was just way wonky. So what happened was when I was able to celebrate a different Christmas, it aligned that I was able to have, more communion with more spirits, and bigger energy ones. So like, why would Bowie come visit me? I have no reason. I don't think he had really anything to tell me. Other than he appreciated that I totally got his album. I could feel it was incredibly programmed. It's incredibly programmed with frequencies and messages. And he knew he was dying at the time. And the guy had alter egos. He channeled beings to create as them as alters, alter egos, experimented with, the liberated mind and creative freedoms. And I love all of that. I worry about that a lot of the time. I worry about creative self-expression because I worry that I'll do it wrong and send myself to hell or do, sin or some shit like that. So it was a lot of that programming, and I really appreciated his liberated views for it for the most part. So that's why we were in alignment for him to show up, because I was also convinced I couldn't write a song for the life of me. How am I ever going to do whatever you're asking me to do? Because Jesus was showing me at the time that you're going to do cool shit. He doesn't curse, but I do. He's like, you're going to do really cool stuff. And Michael was showing me TV shows and theater and movies and just stuff that I was like, oh, cool. Like that all looks really cool. And also terrified the hell out of me at the same time. And yet I was like, well, my background kind of, preludes to all of this. I come from a media background. My grandfather owned several radio stations from Los Angeles and was the president and one of the founding fathers of Southern Broadcast Radio. And my father managed one of my grandfather's radio stations in Monterey, California in the 80s. When I was growing up. And then we had some crazy family drama that I'll get into that later of that getting taken from us. Ha! Fun! So anyway, I've been in broadcast. I understand broadcast. I understand talk radio. I understand interviews. And then I have more of my multimedia background. I used to do the morning announcements in high school. I think I might have even done them in middle school too. We moved. Oh, I did them on the loudspeaker in middle school. That's right. I did the morning announcements and the loudspeaker at school in middle school. And then in high school, I was doing it live for the production credit, whatever. What's it called? Multimedia? Media? Something like that. And that was my first period class every day. Was doing the morning announcements. And so I know how to do all of this. So when they were showing me that stuff, I was like, oh, cool. Like that was kind of my dream a long time ago. Even in college, I did the FSU News. I was the anchor and sometimes the reporter. Back to you, Molly, and back to you. So I'm really, really, I have a lot of experience playing with myself. My ghosts are laughing at me. So when Bowie showed up, I really appreciated it because I knew that I had issues with writing, and yet I could read his lyrics and I'm like, gosh, so much of this is just like stream of consciousness, or it just sounds like poetry. And then I just didn't understand the constructs of writing a song. So it's always been my hang up of, oh, I can't do things. Limiting beliefs of my own limitations, which are really excuses of, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm afraid to go chase my dream, instead of just admitting that. It's, well, I don't know how to write a song. It's our excuse we throw back to God. Well, if I knew how to write a song, if God told me how to write a song, then I don't have an excuse. And since I don't know how to write a song, I'm going to blame it on God that I don't. And that's our excuse. And that's our willful ignorance. Our willful ignorance. That is our willful ignorance. And, it's our problem at the end of the day. So when Bowie showed up, I was rather delighted. And at first I was like, really? Like, you're here? Like, why would you come see me? And he was laughing, and first of all, he was explaining to me that most do not acknowledge him, recognize him, or see him. So he was showing me that I was pretty special, that I even bother to tune in and acknowledge these visitors. Because a lot of times it feels like it's just in my imagination, but then they respond and they tell me stuff and we interact, and like time goes by and it's like, wow, either my imagination very good, or I have visitors. And so I go with the visitors because I have a lot of content for it being just my imagination. So Bowie showed up and he was walking on the walls, and I thought that was just delightful because he was satiating the Flight of the Conchords bit that I love of the Bowie tribute in Flight of the Conchords does. And then he was satiating the Labyrinth reference of him walking on the walls, because I remember Labyrinth from my childhood, and I remember loving Bowie and also being terrified of him and scared of him. And I was like, oh, I hope that's not love. That looks mean and trickery, and I don't like trickery, and I don't like trickery, folks. And so he showed up like that. And I remember I was like, why are you here? And he was like, I'm going to show you how to write a song. And I was like, oh, cool. And I listened to his album, and he was just telling me that a lot of thought went into the process, that he really took into consideration his karmic tie to this album. Like really, like he thought he was awake before, folks. He took it very, 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 very seriously, this last album. And it's really beautiful. And it's just amazing. I mean, it talks about the Lyrans. It talks about, could we be from another planet? Could Jesus have come from another planet? Our Messiah, do our Messiahs, pharaohs and stuff like that, are they extraterrestrial creatures? Is our Messiah something like that too? It's fascinating, the subjects that he broaches. And then on top of that, we have Lazarus, which is just a fabulous number as well. And then Black Star is that Lyran Messiah kind of thing, which is just fantastic too, but it's also incredibly triggering. And I think he means to be, and also is not trying to be overly gratuitously triggering, because the theme of death is incredibly triggering. And the theme of death is, radiating throughout that final album, Black Star. And a lot of it is beautiful deathbed confessions. And some of it is, you can just feel it. You can just feel that there's just an energetic charge in that album. And in all of his work is incredibly profound. So I really appreciated that he was showing me how to write a song. I think I just ended up writing something on my patio. It was just like a stream of consciousness. He was like, just write whatever. And he was like, just get out of your own way, like get out of your own head. And he started telling me like what to write. And it was so like simple that I was like, oh yeah, this isn't that hard. And he was like, see? And I really appreciated that. And that helped me to relax on the creation thing. Because as an artist, I really struggle with my own discipline of my arts, because I've been also told all my life I need to go have a career and a job. And it's like, oh yeah, my job is self-actualizing my art. And they're like, oh, that's adorable. And it's like, oh, well, if you're not in alignment with that, then please try not to marry me. Please try not to hang out with me. Please try not to be in my life, because that's my calling. So I love that the artists show up, and that Jesus brings me a lot of really, really successful artists that have crossed over, because obviously Jesus has some really important work he wants help with going mainstream, because Jesus wants out of the church, he told me, and he wants into Hollywood, and he wants into the media. He wants to be relevant. He wants to be pop culture. He thinks the church has mishandled him, and he's ready to set himself free and make it a lot easier for people to come to him and be more relatable and be, he's showing me this from Dogma, the movie Dogma. He wants to be Buddy Christ. I mean, he really, truly, honestly does. He's sick with everyone being sick over his death. He is sick over. That's all we focus on in religion. We really don't talk about the miracles and his teachings so much as the look what you did. And it's like, whoa, I did that. Well, if I did that, I must be a piece of shit. So this is all the programming he wants to do away with because it's not serving. We think we're so pious and humble with all this bullshit. And he was like, you guys are just wasting time. You're literally wasting your manifestation that God gave you in this body with your martyrdom that I never asked you for. And that I was supposed to be the last of the martyrs. Like, good God, we cannot seem to get this message. So, he's leaving the churches. He does not feel they've done a good enough job spreading his message or getting the people to even like him. And again, if you want to battle me on that, go grab the book of Revelation and tell me how many of the churches he's yelling at, because it's almost all of them. And I think I know the one church he's not yelling at, and that's the one my husband does videos for, because that's a church we support. It's about finding the truth, and it's about honoring Jesus, and it's about healing, and it's about not the church making all the money at the end of the day, because what's the church going to do with it? Are you doing stuff with it? I hope you are, because you'll be judged. I mean, you'll be judged on what you did with your time here. You'll be judged. And as triggering as that sounds, one of the beauties of this podcast is I'm going to help you with your religious programming and those horrible triggers. So back to Bowie. So Bowie is walking around my walls and just delighting me. I was so triggered that I'd have to work with Jesus, that he would just be this stick in the mud, pious, holier than thou, that I could never aspire to, and that he's so full of himself, egoic. And he's so not any of that. And I was so worried that when he was like, oh, I'm your guide, I was like, oh, that means I can't play with anything else. Like, your religion literally says you and nothing. And he was like, yeah, let me explain that. It means choose him first. Yeah, so he's my firewall. When I am in his light, nothing else can see me. So then he brings me stuff. And he brings me stuff like Bowie. And he brings me stuff like Freddie Mercury. And he attracts things like Prince. Oh my God, the shit show that was Prince. And he's still been showing up. He's been playing with my Alexa. Because I'm mad at Prince. I'm kind of mad at him. Prince thought that his penis could heal the nation, or at least all the ladies. And as someone who is a sexual assault survivor, especially from my childhood, with some deranged pedophile with some sick fantasy that his penis had anything to do with me either, it just annoys me. And Prince is trying to make up for it. He crossed over with so much programming and so many secrets that he was like insane when he crossed over. So, all right, I'm going to jump from Freddie to this now. I'm going to jump from Bowie, but I'm going to jump over Freddie. And then I'll jump back to Freddie at the end. So when Prince showed up, I was talking to Jesus one day. Jesus was like, hey, History Channel has some documentary on me. And I was like, oh, cool. And he was like, yeah, and it's pretty good stuff. It's like history related. It's not all me being a pious asshole. And I was like, oh, cool, good, learning instead of just feeling like shit. And so I watched this whole CBS thing, I think it was on, and he was showing me, he was like, better content is coming. And then he was showing me that I'm going to help create better content of his stuff also. And then now we have The Chosen, which is way better Jesus content and very well done. And so he brought me, no, he did not bring me. He attracted Prince, obviously, because Prince was showing me his program and Jesus was showing me his program. And then I've researched his program, and he was Jehovah's Witness. And that's a program. That is quite a program, folks. Any religion is quite a program, especially if they don't like each other. They're all Christian. It's very weird. And so Prince crossed over with a lot of religious conflicting program of what he preached and what he avoided within the religion that he also was 100% committed to, or at least was trying to be. and spreading and obeying. And God bless him. That's what he thought the program called for, was complete discipline to this program. And he's forgiven for that, but he's also shown his programming on the other side of, hey, here was your programming. You're not above the programming, Prince. And so Prince crossed over with a lot of, he was lying to himself a lot, and was still very concerned with the lie once he crossed over, and keeping secrets and hiding things. And he was starting to see some of the ways he was wrong. And Prince has a huge ego, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just he's very tethered to his persona of Prince, and for good reason. He had quite a journey here. I mean, Jesus is pretty tethered to his identity too, which we can say is ego too. Your identity is your ego, because I am not this identity. I'm a spark of God, right? That's what we all are, remember? And then this avatar, this thing, this Molly, is my ego. It's my egoic part of me. The more I transcend it, the more I realize I am not this thing, really. But I am here, and for the time being, and I have my shit to transcend. So I was talking to Jesus, and I was laying in bed, and I was watching all those documentaries, and I was just up to my brim with Jesus facts and history, and what this was and what that was, and the shroud of Turin, and this and that, and the resurrection, and and then he's explaining a bunch of things too, which is always fascinating, because they're speculating, and he's going, yeah, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then I see a vision, and then he shows me Mary Magdalene, and then Mary Magdalene shows me a vision, and then I connect with Judas, and Judas shows me a vision, and then I connect with whomever Jesus needs me to connect to see the bigger picture, to see all the picture, to see the biggest picture, and in the biggest truth. And so after that happened, something was going on in the Facebook land of drama, and Jesus was trying to get me to realize that the drama it's just toxic. And it's so funny, the minute I started thinking about the trauma, I'm literally nauseous again. But he said, come outside and come sit with me on the patio. And so I sat on the patio, and I came outside, and he goes, you're a drama queen, right? And I was like, hey, yes, but let me explain. And then Jesus was like, no, you don't have to explain. But he was like, don't take it personally, because that's literally the Earth's thing. The Earth it's a drama fest, and it's because of lack of passion and purpose. Because the lack of passion is drama. The lack of drama is passion. Drama is purposeless action for the sake of reaction. And passion is a purposeful action for the sake of reaction, of a positive action. And drama is, inciting the negative. So he's calling me out on that, and he says, you're a drama queen. And I was like, yeah, I can't argue with you, but I think you're kind of a jerk for saying that, because it's not my fault. I mean, look at this place. And that's what he was saying. He was like, look, yeah, it's not your fault. Be aware of it. Earth is one giant drama fest. And so he was warning me not to get sucked into the drama, because our time is precious here. And the darkness, one thing that they do have is they can waste our time, and then we have to reincarnate or try again or give up or just whatever, or, wait till the last minute, or, whatever the programming is. I mean, divine timing is a thing, and everything's going to happen the way it's going to happen. So as I'm sitting on the patio, I'm looking at Jesus, and he's over to my right. I'm looking at him, and we're talking, and I see out of my peripheral vision the purple Prince man walk in, and he dances in, and it's almost like he's danced into heaven, because I feel like there's like clouds and everything. Like, I feel like if I disassociate into the vision, Jesus is sitting and talking to me, and we're in just like this cloudy area, and all of a sudden, like foggy, cloudy area, and all of a sudden Prince jams in, and Prince looks at Jesus and is blown away that he's just seeing Jesus. And I mean, maybe he saw Jesus before that too. At that moment, he didn't understand why Jesus was talking to a human woman through the veil. And then Prince was very curious that I could see him also. That was trying to get my attention. And Jesus said to Prince, be cool, dude. She just got here. Meaning, and this is how I took it, and this is how hindsight of 2020 after going on shenanigans with Prince, this is what that meant. Dude, she has just had her awakening. She's just coming to terms with recognizing and seeing us again from her childhood that she tuned out because no one else could and no one else wanted to hear it. And she felt like a freak show. And she just got here. Like, she just got back. Please do not take her from me. Because this was before I installed Jesus as my Yeshua 2.0 activation and in the whole Christ consciousness firewall thing. And I'm not saying it was because of Prince, but it kind of was. Prince was the last straw. Prince wasted so much of my time. He was asking me to carry on shenanigans. He was asking me on Twitter to reach out to certain people that I was like, I don't know who they are. And he was like, and then he'd show me Twitter, and I was like, duh, of course, like, I know I can find them on Twitter. And I was like, I can't believe you're going to make me do this. And then he was like, yeah, and make sure you're doing it in my code or they are not going to believe that it's you. And I was like, oh my God, you're so much work. But he was deranged with programming of, first of all, I think he was definitely bisexual. I mean, there's been rumors, and then I know and this is what preludes to Freddie Mercury. There's a ton of shame around that. Whether it's bad or not, there's a program here that says you're going to hell if you dabble in it. And for those who have dabbled, I dabbled in college as being bisexual. I'm not sending myself to hell for that. No, it was a learning experience, and it was. And I learned that I didn't trust men, and that's why I was going after women. And then I learned I wasn't all that into women, and it was a trauma thing, and that I really needed to figure out the men. So judge me all you want, or see that I learned something. And that's probably what God's intention was of me to have that episode or experience manifest. I digress. Anyway, so Prince died with a shit ton of programming. And Prince was explaining to me his elevator song, the Dearly Beloved, We Are Gathered Here Today. He played it today. Oh, yeah, before this podcast. He played it today. And if you listen to the lyrics, it talks about his funeral. He obviously saw his own death. He showed me that he did, that he battled with seeing his own death of him dying in an elevator. And that was the song is when the elevator tries to break you down, punch a higher floor. I mean, obviously, he saw himself in the future. He saw himself dead. He saw how he dies. And then it manifested, and that's pretty crazy. But he was very prophetic. He obviously had visions, and they tortured him. And that whole song talks about being tortured by this vision, to the point of creating a song where the opening music sounds like you're at a funeral. You know, and I love that George Michael did that too with Faith. That sounds like a funeral as well. And they all do that for their purposes and their reasons. George Michael did it because he was killing his true side for the sake of stardom. And Prince, you know, he was dying in his vision. He saw a prophetic future of his last moments on earth, and they came to fruition. So he was having me all over with that. And it got to the point where I was also working full time in the Muggle world and doing some telecommunications work for a girlfriend, friend of the family. And I remember I had to get a certain amount of contracts every week. I had to make sure that, you know, the project was moving along and that things were done and that, you know, calls were made and deals were negotiated and contracts were done and you know, site evaluations and installations, you know, all this stuff was done. And then at the same time, Prince is like, I need you to Twitter everyone on Twitter. And it's like, all right. So Jesus told me, he said, listen, I know Bowie is really fun here. And I know Prince is really fun here, but you need to tell them that they need to do stuff for you. And while Bowie was fine, he wasn't really much of the problem. He was teaching me, you know, how to write a song. Prince wasn't doing anything for me other than gracing me with his presence. I kid you not. So when I finally told them, when I told Prince and them, I was like, hey, if you want me to do anything for you anymore, because I was finding other psychics that were channeling Prince also, and he was doing similar things with them too, to the point where this one psychic was like, I don't even believe you. I think you're part of Prince's murder or death or whatever. And like to the point where I'm like, this isn't even fun, Prince. Like, I'm not even enjoying this. I'm not going to work for you anymore. I'm not going to help you anymore. And that's when Jesus was like, you need to make them do things. You need to make them, have a simpatico relationship. So I told them if they expect any help from me, they need to help me get these contracts in. I need phone calls returned. I need work to be easier. Otherwise, I have no time for you. And, 5 contracts came in probably that day, because that's how that works. And I've done it repeatedly. If I need something and they want something from me, I tell them what I need from them. And I'm so appreciative that Jesus has taught me that not to just let these spirits drain me and tell me what to do because, I'm so honored to be in your freaking presence. When it's like, Jesus is here and I'm way more honored to be in his presence. He actually knows how to get out of this shit show. So Prince showing up was so interesting because I listened to Prince's songs, and one of the things that he crossed over and is being reprimanded for, or educated for, or judged for, or karmic defense for, is that Prince truly thought that his penis was to help women or cure them or whatever, that his penis was God's gift. And I know that that's a toxic masculinity thing, that a lot of men think this way. And no, stop that. It's not. Your penis is not going to self-actualize me. I promise you. I just promise you that. So please don't make all the songs about how fast girls are and, just the negative sexual energy in the songs. I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan. I think they don't show love at the end of the day. I just don't think they are loving. And to the point where I was like, listen, Prince, I don't even want to hear your music anymore. As a sexual assault survivor, I know that a penis was a big part of my problem. And I don't need you telling me that I'm fast or whatever shit is in your lyrics because I'm actually sexually abused. So I kind of shut Prince out after that. I did the Yeshua 2.0 activation and installed Jesus as my firewall. And it's almost like a I'm not available sign. I'm working one-on-one with Jesus, and they don't need to know any more or less than that. But he'll tell me if they want to talk to me, and then I make the decision of, okay, what are we talking about? And they don't know that I'm telling them to go away or to come back or that I'm not available. So I wanted to talk about also my aunt when she passed away. I think it was just last year. It's so hard to keep track of time because I still talk to them all. I still see them all. My aunt passed away, which is my dad's one of my dad's older sisters. And my dad passed away. He was the first to pass away of his siblings, and he was the youngest. And he passed away in 2007. So it's been some time. And now his sister passed away a year ago. And I woke up, I think it was like probably 7 a.m, and I could feel her in my room. And I was like, oh yeah, I know you passed. Oh, it's so good to see you. Like, I'm glad you're here. And then she was like talking to me, and I was like, oh, I'm still sleeping. Come back at 9. I was like, oh, I'm still sleeping. I can't hear you. Come back at 9:30. So I woke up at like 9:30, and she was still there. And I was like, oh, hey, cool. You're still here. What's going on? And she was showing me that there was an issue. She was showing me that her kids were going to freak out, or that they were freaking out about something. And I was like, no, come on. They believe you're fine, right? They don't think you're in hell or some shit. And she was laughing. And then she was kind of like, yeah, there's some weird, they're freaking out. Like there's some weird sign that they're misinterpreting. So, and I don't know if I even received that message fully until my cousin called me. So my cousin reaches out to me and she goes, can I call you? I have to ask you something. So she calls me and she goes, my mom died and we've been so upset. We've been so sad. She goes, we came home and her favorite angel statue had fallen and broken its wing. And she was like, and we are taking this as a bad omen. We think it's a bad omen. And that's when I started laughing. And that's when my Aunt Barbara started laughing too. She was like, this is what they're freaking out about. And I was like, oh, and then she showed me that she got a little overzealous in checking on her abilities to see if she could actually touch an object. And she touched this thing. And since she was so excited to see it, and she had just, I guess, the perfect amount of energy to fuel it, she ricocheted it. She made it fall. She pushed it. She touched it. And it fell, and she couldn't catch it because she doesn't have that much of a body. And she hasn't figured out her energy enough to be almost like poltergeist mode. So, so she said, that was it. And so I told her, and she was so relieved. And at first she couldn't even believe it, but I was like, no, I promise you, like, she was in my room this morning telling me that there was something that you were freaking out about. And this is it. And she's showing me that she was trying to touch it, and she was just trying to see what she was capable of and if she could touch it. And she was excited to see it. And she doesn't have a body, and she doesn't know what she's doing. And it fell and broke. And she really does not want you to believe that this is a bad omen. And so my cousin really appreciated that. So we had a really good talk about that. And then I wanted to move on and talk about Freddie Mercury too. So Jesus sings me a lot of Freddie Mercury songs. One of them was Flash Gordon a couple years ago, when he kept showing me that he wants to save the world, that he's got to save the world, that the second coming is, Flash Gordon, defender of the universe and our salvation. And he's got to fulfill that. People are expecting it, and it's got to manifest one way or another. And the people who are not expecting it and who know they can just communicate through the veil, do that now. Feel free. Otherwise, he's got to manifest other ways to find all his other sheep. And don't be one of those sheep. Meet him. Come out of the forest. Go into the meadow. Meet him in the meadow, if you could. That'd be nice. Otherwise, he'll find you in the forest. Wait in the forest. But if you can find the meadow, go for it. I digress. Anyway, so Freddie Mercury sends himself to hell a lot because of his programming. Jesus was showing me. And Jesus was showing me he really does not need to send himself to hell, because God doesn't make mistakes, and God doesn't really care if you are gay. You just can't procreate. So you wouldn't be able to keep the planet going for the original plan. That's all that meant, was for procreation purposes. You would need an Adam and Eve, and not an Adam and Steve, or an Eve and Lilith. Those two can't procreate, and Adam and Steve can't procreate. But we have 8 billion people and a bunch of fucking kids in childcare that aren't wanted. Yeah, I think the gays serve a purpose, that thank God they can't procreate, and thank God they can raise some kids that they want to, that they're so traumatized they don't want to pass on the trauma anymore, and they'd like to teach some love. So, come on, look at all these things. So he was showing me Freddie Mercury sends himself to hell often because of his programming, and him dying of AIDS, and just all the shame and all the programming, and that Jesus goes down to hell and shakes things up and has to remind him to leave there. And then Freddie Mercury has shown me, he's like, why does Jesus haunt me? Why does he haunt me? And I was like, oh my gosh, I hate that you guys are so disconnected. Jesus doesn't hate you. He's trying to get your attention that you're not supposed to be here. And Freddie Mercury is taking it as God is coming down, or Jesus is coming down to hell to yell at you further. And again, that's his programming. And he was a beautiful, beautiful man, a beautiful creature that's self-actualized. And while he self-actualized out of a lot of spite of the programming, we can do that. And you're judged on it, though. You're still judged on your ignorance. It's almost, they refer to some of that as petty karmic ties. Like, it's indirectly your fault. Like, the programming is more at fault than you are, in a lot of cases. In most cases, if not all cases, folks. Let's be serious. Let's be real here. So Freddie Mercury, Jesus sings me. Freddie Mercury, Jesus sings me. What's one of the songs that he sings me the most? The Flash Gordon and Somebody Find Me, Somebody to Love. He loves that song. He feels really responsible for Freddie Mercury's self-professed inability to have love. Find me someone to love. God, you find me someone to love, because according to the program, I'm not allowed to love who I love. And then God kept sending him more gays, and he was like, what do I do? And God's like, fuck the program, literally. But, don't also have sex with just anything willy-nilly. And that's the beef that I have. Those are a lot of puns. That's the beef that I have with Prince. Your penis is not healing anyone unless a girl literally tells you, I need your penis to heal me. And we're doing sex magic. And she's got to really know what she's doing. So the likelihood of that happening is probably not going to happen. But I further digress. those are the three things I wanted to talk about as far as Bowie and Prince and Freddie. Oh my. How did I say it? Bowie and Freddie and Prince. Oh my. And then I wanted to mention my aunt. And then, it's 40-minute episode. I guess I'll do another episode when Luke Perry showed up and when Tom Petty, when I met Tom Petty after he died and he was going on his life review. And they were showing me his petty karmic offenses. That's where that came from, was Tom Petty. So I guess I'm going to wrap up. We're at 40 minutes and I really appreciate you spending another lapse of time with me in this alternative dimension, in this new space of this fun podcast of Let's Be Frank with your host, Molly Sky Brown. And I appreciate you being here with me and Frank. And we'll talk to you guys soon. If you'd like to work closely with me, you can click on the link in the show notes to access my premium support group on Commanding Magic. There I teach you the basics of all things manifesting and how we're always manifesting and why it would behoove us to know what we're doing.